Hello everyone, this is not an episode of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. This is the latest episode in our new series, Who Did It Better? Last week you would have seen Harry review the 1960 Alfred Hitchcock directed Psycho and compared it to the 1998 Gus Van Sant directed remake. And yeah, watch that video if you want to see his conclusion as to which of those is better. Spoiler alert, it's the Hitchcock version. But yeah, this week I'm going to do something very similar with the 12 Angry Men 1957 Sidney Lumet directed 12 Angry Men versus the 1997 William Friedkin directed remake. So yeah, it's the all important question, who did it better? Little latest episode, like I said, here on the channel this week. So basically, the 1957 directed Sidney Lumet is considered one of the all-time great films by about pretty much everyone who's seen it. Can the 1997 film live up to its predecessor? Can it bring in some new elements, some new things? Well, basically, I'm going to touch on some of the differences and similarities that the two films have, and then at the end conclude which of them is better, who did it better. So the 1997 version does have a few key differences. For one thing, the 1957 Sidney Lumet version, the original, has an all-white cast. The 1997 version has 4 African-American jurors. Juror number 1, played by Courtney B. Vance. Juror number 2, played by Ossie Davis. Juror number 5, played by Dorian Harewood. And juror number 10, played by Mykelti Williamson. And Mykelti Williamson's juror number 10, by the way, is definitely the most interesting, in my opinion, difference of any of these differences compared to the original. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, so at the start of the film, we kind of hear in the 1997 version, all the windows are open and we can hear the hustle and bustle of the city below. That's kind of a difference from the 1957 original, because in the original, yeah, the windows were open and it's referenced it's a really hot day. I mean, the script, it should be said, the script is very, very similar in both cases when it comes to the key details. But you don't really hear that kind of noise down below as much in the original. From a technical aspect, the film does kind of at times employ a kind of handheld vibe as opposed to the original, which is it's much more of a steady cam. The remake does at points go to more of a handheld vibe to kind of give more of a documentarian feel, kind of like you're almost eavesdropping in on this jury case. Like there's like almost a camera crew in the room. Just at certain points, it doesn't use it all the time, but it is there, and it's an interesting difference as opposed to the original. Another really interesting difference is in the original we don't hear really much background at all about the victim in the case. So this immigrant father, a Latin American father who has been stabbed to death. In the remake, they do kind of talk about his background, and they talk about the fact that he's a gambler. They talk about the fact that he couldn't hold down a job. I'm glad I didn't dwell too much on that, because it could have come across a little bit like victim blaming. So there's a few little lines and then they don't really spend too much time on it. But that's an interesting difference, because yeah, we kind of get the victim's backstory fleshed out a little bit more. Obviously, this is because they want to kind of bring in some new possible suspects, throw some possible doubt on the defendant, which is this young Latin American kid, 18-year-old kid, who obviously has been accused of killing his father. The film is kind of wanting the audience in this case to consider whether there could have been someone else. So yeah, but we don't really get any names, any suspects in this. It's more just speculation on the jurors' parts, just to say, listen, maybe it wasn't the kid, maybe it was this person instead. There are also a few updated cultural references just to let the audience know we are in the 1990s here, not the 1950s. For example, the main one will probably be juror number 7 talks about Tyson versus Holyfield, which has just happened. Obviously, yeah, back in the 50s, Tyson and Holyfield weren't even born yet. There are a couple of other things like that sprinkled throughout, kind of similar to what Harry said in the Psycho episode with the Walkman. Julianne Moore's infamous line where she says, "Let me go get my Walkman." So yeah, this is just signaling to the audience we are in the 1990s. There's also a scene where they bring up some testimony from a psychiatrist. This isn't in the original again, where the psychiatrist essentially says, yeah, I believe the boy could be accused of murder for this reason, for this reason. That's not in the original at all, and it's in there almost to, again, on the opposite side, to give a bit more credence to the idea that the kid is capable of murder and did do this crime. It's only a few lines, they don't dwell on it too much. Probably the biggest issue I had with this remake is the fact that there's a discussion at one point between jurors 3, 4 and 10, and we know they're kind of the three jurors most in the guilty camp. At one point, they're standing around together and they're talking about, well, we should just let this thing go to a hung jury. They're seeing one by one people come along to the not guilty side, and they're kind of starting to wonder, look, we believe the kid is guilty. Maybe we should just let this thing go to a hung jury, because then there's going to have to be a retrial, and the retrial is definitely going to find him guilty, because they're not going to have anyone like juror number 8 surely on this, who's just so kind of caught up in the not guilty side. But again, I can understand it maybe from juror number 10, because even though he's just as flat out racist, and we'll come to him again, like I said, one of the most interesting, maybe the most interesting difference for certain reasons, as opposed to the original. But juror number 3, and again a little bit later we see it between jurors number 3 and 4 only, where juror number 3 is, again, he's advocating for, he's almost in the first scene he's a little bit more reluctant to go down that route, but a little bit later on with juror number 4 he's basically advocating for going to a hung jury. And I didn't really like that much. The reason being is that we know that juror number 3 has taken a personal interest in this case. He almost needs to be the person, or certainly one of the people responsible for punishing this kid, as we said in the episode that just dropped this week.
What is the matter with you people? Every one of you knows he's guilty. He's got to burn. We let him slip through our fingers.
Slip through our fingers? What are you, his executioner?
I'm one of them.
Maybe you'd like to put the needle in.
For this kid, you bet I would.
God, I'm sorry for you.
Don't start with me now.
Ever since we've walked into this room, you've acted like a self-appointed public avenger.
Shut up.
You want the boy to die for your own personal reasons, not because of the facts.
I didn't buy that he would then all of a sudden then not care whether he was involved or not. His whole thing is he needs to be involved in disciplining this kid, because he no longer has a relationship with his son, because he smacked him across the face years ago, and his son no longer talks to him for that reason. Moving on to, in my opinion, the most interesting difference in the film is that juror number 10, again, he has all the same kind of racism and xenophobia and bigotry of the original juror number 10, but this time he is played by an African American actor, Mykelti Williamson. And there's an interesting conversation actually a bit earlier between juror number 10, where he mentions the juror number 6, played by James Gandolfini, that he used to be in the Nation of Islam, but they hinted that they had a kind of a disagreement. Maybe his methods were a bit too extreme for the Nation of Islam, so that they obviously didn't want him to be a part of the group anymore. And we can see that then, because in that famous amazing scene where he goes on this utterly racist diatribe.
They get drunk. Oh, they're real big drinkers, all of them. You know that. And bang, someone's lying in the gutter. Well, nobody's blaming them for it. That's the way they are, by nature. You know what I mean? Violent. Where are you going? Human life don't mean as much to them as it does to us. Look, they're lushing it up and fighting all the time. And if somebody gets killed, so somebody gets killed, they don't care.
They flip it this time to him needing vengeance. He's obviously been a victim of racial abuse. It's heavily hinted at, and yeah, it doesn't take a lot to read in between the lines there. He's been racially abused, but unfortunately then instead of using this to advocate for his own civil rights and civil rights of other African Americans, he's now being racist, and he's being an absolute bigot, an absolute xenophobe towards kind of Latin American, these kind of communities.
If we don't smack them down, if we don't do something every chance we get, then they're gonna own us. They're gonna breed us out of existence.
Shut up!
I'm warning you, you listen to me. I'm telling you, this boy on trial, we got him. We got him. That's one at least. I say that we get him before his kind gets us. I don't give a damn about the law. Why should I? They don't.
Whereas in the film, obviously in the first film, in the original Sidney Lumet film, it's played by a white actor. This time it is by an African American actor, and that's a really interesting part, because again, it's still essentially the same role, the same absolute racist underpinnings of the character. He's not driven by anything other than racism. He's not driven by anything about the case. But you add in this layer of the fact that juror number 10 now has been racially abused and has been a victim of this stuff in the past. But yeah, now instead he has almost become what he hates. He has become the thing that he's fighting against. And finally, that all famous monologue by juror number 3 at the end, where he finally breaks down and he finally acquiesces and says not guilty.
You lousy bunch of bleeding hearts. You're not going to intimidate me. I'm entitled to my opinion. rotten kids, you work your life out. No. Not guilty.
Again, it's a really good performance by George C. Scott throughout the film. Great actor, obviously. But I did find in the final half an hour, nothing to do with Scott, by the way, it's just the script. The script is it's almost, scenes are just going on a little bit too long. These little moments are just going on a little bit too long. And George C. Scott's monologue goes on again just a bit too long. It doesn't really have the emotional heft of Lee J. Cobb's. So, we come to the all-important question. Who did it better? Yeah, listen, the original is an all-time classic and it is a better film. It's a full 5 stars from me. I think it's a full 5 stars. If you go on Letterboxd, it's ridiculous, the kind of bar graph there, because it's so much higher than every other rating anyone's ever given it. In my opinion, it's one of the greatest films of all time. It's certainly one of my favourite films of all time. But I will say for the 1997 version, I don't know if it necessarily needed to be remade, but it's still a very good adaptation. It's a very good remake. It's one of the stronger remakes, to be honest, I've seen from Hollywood. So yeah, the 1957 version is the better film, and out of the two, if you're going to watch one of them, you can only watch one of them, watch both. But really, you can't really go wrong with the 1997 version either. So either or is really good, albeit the 1957 version is the better film. So yeah, that's 12 Angry Men. Who did it better? Again, it's the 1957 version, in my opinion. So thanks for watching this latest installment of Who Did It Better here on the channel. Again, something that we're probably going to do every now and then when you have a really big film and you have like a bunch of remakes. I think Harry might have something in the works. I'm not going to spoil that. I'll let him reveal it soon. But again, it'll be something similar along these lines. And yeah, if you liked the video, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. It really does go a long way. But the 12 Angry Men podcast episode, by the way, is up now, and it's done really well, to be honest. We're really happy with the feedback in the last few weeks. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. And thanks again for watching. I've been Shane Mulvaney from the Golden Hour Film Podcast.